everyone, welcome back to Thoughts from Bookworm. I'm Abigail Grace. Today we are going to be talking about An Ember in the Ashes, which is the first book of a 4-book series. Now, I am probably only going to be talking about book 1 because I did really enjoy book 2, 3, and 4, but starting about like halfway through book 2, it gets very fantasy heavy, and I'm not a fantasy girly. Just not my preferred genre. I did read all 4 books, and I did very much enjoy, 80 to 90% of them. I don't know that I would be able to film 3 episodes and have enough content to talk about because most of the fantasy-related stuff just kind of, went over my head. I was very confused, half the time, just knowing what was going on and who was doing what and who all these mythical fantasy creatures were doing and all that kind of stuff. So book 1 is definitely my favorite. I did very much enjoy book 2, and there were parts about book 3 and 4 that I did enjoy. But this book series was recommended to me by the same friend who recommended the Lunar Chronicles, which is kind of funny because those 2 book genres are, in my opinion, completely different. Lunar Chronicles is very, science fiction. Not contemporary, but contemporary-esque. It is science fiction, obviously, but enough, I don't know. And then you have this book that's, very fantasy-heavy, very, there's ghosts, there's ghouls, there's efforts and wraiths and spirit thingies. I don't know. So it's very, very different. The heart of the story is set in this military training school called Blackcliff, and it's super intense, very gory, very graphic, very, very intense. Something like half of the students end up dying because of just the mistreatment, the malnourishment, the beatings, the whippings. It's just a very intense school, and it's kind of like anything goes. I don't want to say certain words because I don't want to get demonetized or whatever, but graping is very common and it is okay. Just all sorts of stuff. Murders, there really are no rules outside of the students following the commandant telling them what to do, kind of thing. The commandant is probably the most intense character in the entire book series. She's very harsh, she's very ruthless, and honestly, I feel like the author kind of went too far with it, just because at a certain point, and this is going to sound really horrible, but at a certain point, I was desensitized to it. It was oh, this 12-year-old girl was murdered in an alley. Oh, I've seen worse in this book series. So it was kind of there was a lot of graphicness in it, and it kind of just got to a point where it's okay, we get it. It's a dark world, it's graphic, there's murders, there's a ton of stuff going on that should not be going on, that kind of thing. It's split. It's first-person POV, and it's split between Elias Futurius, who is a student of Blackcliff, and Laia, she's a scholar, which is the working class kind of servant people, and her brother is kidnapped by the masks. I guess we don't really think of them as, they're not technically bad guys because, well, they're bad guys. But Laia's brother is kidnapped by the Masks, which Elias is in training for Blackcliff to be a mask. He's kidnapped. Laia puts together that he's been working with the Resistance, which is the rebellion, that kind of thing. So she is able to find the rebellion or the Resistance and agree to work with them if they will then help her find her brother. Because at that point, her brother's yeah, sorry. The Resistance is basically yeah, sorry, we can't really help you because your brother wasn't really that big of a deal, but if you help us, we'll help you. So the Resistance says, okay, you have to go spy on the commandant of Blackcliff Military Academy. Laia is not familiar with Blackcliff or the commandant, so she agrees to it. So she goes undercover as a slave for the commandant. She's immediately starting to be mistreated. She's, beaten and whipped. She immediately sees the intensity of the commandant. She understands why the commandant's slaves keep dying because she's just so brutal with them. That's kind of the main setup for Laia. Elias is planning to desert Blackcliff. He does not agree with the majority of what is going on. He's planning to desert. He knows that by doing so, he will alienate his best friend, Helene Aquila, who is my favorite character. I love Helene so much, and I honestly loved her right from the get-go. She was my favorite character. I love her so much, but we'll talk more about her in a little bit. But Elias is planning to desert, so the story, his first chapter opens with him planning to desert, him stashing these this bag of food and supplies kind of buried. Helene walks in on him. The two of them kind of start talking. We learn that there is a deserter from Blackcliff who they are actively hunting. He's 10 years old. He deserted Blackcliff. They find him. Elias's platoon actually is the one that finds him. Elias is obviously very like distraught about that. This little boy is beaten to death, and it's very public. It's very graphic. Again, it's just and this is gonna sound really terrible. That honestly, I felt like was a well-written graphic situation because it established right from the get-go how perverted Blackcliff is. I don't know if perverted is the right word. How dark, how evil Blackcliff is. Even though it was very graphic and very, difficult. It wasn't difficult to read because it was graphic. It was just like, what's happening. Your heart breaks for this 10-year-old boy who's so terrified that he runs away and is kidnapped and then beaten to death and all that kind of stuff. So Elias kind of like reinforces, okay, this is why I'm leaving. Like, he still is planning on leaving. He and Helene are both in the senior group of Blackcliff, so they're getting ready to graduate. And Elias is planning on deserting right after graduation, which is unusual because it's the hell of Blackcliff that like drives people to try and run away. Elias thinking, okay, I'll have a good 2-week head start because after graduation, everybody's going to be on leave. There's going to be celebrating, this and that. No one will notice if he goes missing for a few days. So that's kind of his plan. Before he's able to put his plan into effect, he is visited by the Aguars. This is another reason why I have a hard time with fantasy. I'm terrible with pronunciation. I think that's how you say their name is the Aguars? Aguars is the easiest to say. I don't know if that's actually how it's supposed to be pronounced, but Aguar. I'm going to say Aguars because it sounds like Jaguar, and that's easier for me to say. He is visited by an Aguar, Cain, who's kind of like the head Aguar. And Cain tells him that we know you're running away. They're kind of like not all powerful, all knowing, but they know how to read people. They know how to observe like in super intense detail. So Cain tells Elias, we know you're going to desert. We're not going to stop you, but just know that if you desert, it won't bring you peace. You're going to be just as miserable if you desert versus if you don't. So Elias is now like, oh, geez, Louise, like now kind of what do I do? The way that the world is set up is there is an emperor who is like the tyrant. He holds all the power. And then his second is called the Bloodstrike, who is the second in command over the empire. And it was prophesied, there's prophecy that at some point the Aguars were going to come and restructure or reappoint an emperor and a Bloodstrike. So during graduation, Elias and Helene, they're both graduated. Everybody's super happy. Then however many, I think there's 9 Aguars. They all come to graduation. They say, okay, this is the year that we're going to reappoint a new emperor and a new Bloodstrike. Even though the existing emperor and Bloodstrike are still around, they're still there, they're still doing their thing. So the Aguars picked the top 4 students of Blackcliff to compete in a series of trials. The winner would be made emperor, and the second would be made Bloodstrike. So he picks them in order of their rank, which is Elias, who is first in his class, Marcus, who's this scumbag, Helene, she's the third in her class, which is amazing, and Zach, which is Marcus's twin brother. So the 4 of them are the top 4 students. They're picked, and they're told up front, you do not have to accept. If you say no, we'll just pick the next one in line. So Marcus accepts, Helene accepts, Zach accepts. Elias is like, oh, shoot. So now I have the opportunity to, fight. If I say no, that's going to look odd. So he accepts, and then, parties ensue, celebrations, all this and that. So all this is going on. Laia is still undercover for the Commandant. She's not given super clear instructions as to, what her mission is. All she knows is she has to, spy on the Commandant and report back to one of the main resistance people. All while trying to not be spotted, because if she is found out by the Commandant, she will be killed. It's not she'll be punished. She will literally be killed or beaten or whipped or whatever. She has to be very, very careful. So later, I don't know if it's the next chapter or a couple chapters later, the Commandant, carves into her skin the letter K, because the commandant's first name is Kara. So she carves a K into Laia's skin in a very, obviously very painful way. Elias gets infected. She almost dies. She encounters Elias at some point. Elias kind of like takes pity on her, but he's afraid of being too helpful because he doesn't want to frighten her, because it was very common for masks to grape the female slaves, and because Laia is very beautiful, it's would not be uncommon for that to happen. So he's kind of trying to like keep a boundary between them for her sake, which I thought was like really sweet in a weird twisted way that he even has to think like that. But I thought it was very, that it showed his character that he was so concerned about that for her. So not a whole lot happens with Lai. It's mostly her just figuring out her role, trying to stay hidden. She befriends one of the other slaves there named Izzy, who's absolutely adorable. My heart literally breaks for Izzy. I think we're told she's 15. She's been a slave her whole life there at Blackcliff. She works in the kitchens, so she doesn't have a whole lot of contact with the commandant, which is why she survived this long. She is missing an eye, which Laia learns later that when the commandant punished one of the other slaves, she gouged out Izzy's eye, like, as punishment for the other slaves. So it's just a very twisted, very twisted, gruesome situation. But the trials start for Elias and Helene. The two of them, who have been best friends forever, kind of like team up the same way that Marcus and Zach, their twin brothers, they team up. They both progress. And Cain was very clear that only 2 will come out of the trials. So it's not like a first, second, third, fourth place. It's whoever wins 2 trials. Whoever wins 2 trials is the emperor. Whoever wins 1 trial is the blood strike, and then the other 2 die. And that can't be right, because there's possibility for, I don't remember how they structure it, but there's a structure system. So 2 people are going to die at the end of these trials. So as Elias is kind of going through the trials, he starts to think, okay, hang on a second. If he helps Helene win and become emperor, and she makes him her blood strike, then she would then have the power to release him. So he's thinking, okay, maybe that's what Cain is thinking. If I just follow through, if I do what I'm supposed to do, I will still be free, and it will all be like, it will be a good thing. Nobody will hunt me. I won't have to be chasing shadows or running from shadows or whatever. So that's then kind of Elias's goal. At the same time, he's getting these kind of weird feeling from Helene. Like, she's not quite acting like herself, but she's not really acting strange enough for him to think something is wrong. At some point, Elias promises to get Laia, who's still dealing with the infection from the K carved into her, some herb or some potion or something that will help with infection. So he's kind of like thinking to himself one time, he slips and says Laia's name in front of Helene. Helene kind of bristles and is like, why are you talking to slaves? I thought that you were above that. She kind of thinks that he's sleeping with her. Helene just kind of like bristles. Throughout the course of the trials, Helene discovers this ability she has that when she sings, she can heal people. And it's a very focused, a very concentrated singing. She has to find each individual person's special melody. It's not like Rapunzel, where she just sings a song and heals whoever. It's a very specific song. She heals Elias, and she confides in Elias that she discovered this ability during the trial. She's kind of panicking because she doesn't want to be outed as like a witch, or, you know, be put to death because of that. So she like begs us, please don't tell anybody. Elias, of course, is like, no, he's not gonna tell anybody. He loves her, not romantically, but, you know, they're best friends. They're basically family. He promises to protect her. At a later point, there's like this festival that Laia and Izzy sneak off to. Even though they're not really supposed to, they kind of risk it to go. Laia needs to meet with her informant, so she goes, kind of meets with them. The two of them are able to sneak back, but Helene catches them, and on her way, she decides that she's going to turn them over to the commandant, especially because she knows that Laia is the one that Elias was talking about. She tells Elias she's going to turn them over to the commandant. Elias then threatens that if she does that he will then tell the commandant about her healing ability. So he blackmails her. Helene very angrily storms off. The two of them kind of are at odds then from that point on through the rest of the book. Elias tries to backpedal a little bit because in his mind he's like, okay, if I want Helene to set me free, I kind of need to be on her good side. So he's weighing with all that. he then finds out from one of his friends that friend, I think his name is, I want to say Leander, but it's not Leander. It starts with an Tristis. His fiance's name starts with an A. Elias finds out from one of his soldiers, Tristis, that Helene is in love with Elias and has been for a little while. Elias kind of dismisses that. No, that's like, Helene and I aren't, we're friends, we're soldiers, we're comrades, like that's it. Tristis insists that Helene is in love with him. Elias kind of starts to see the signs that Helene is in fact in love with him. That only adds to his general confusion because he's thinking, okay, great, if I give in to that and kind of like, not use Helene, but kind of use her feelings for me to my advantage, will she then set me free? If she's made Emperor and I made Bloodstrike, will she still set me free? Or if we're entangled together, will that, mess things up or something? So he's kind of dealing with all that. He's frustrated with her. He's frustrated with her lack of empathy toward the scholars, toward the slaves, how Helene is very like, oh yes, we're better. We as masks, as Illustrians, we're better than everybody else. And Elias is frustrated with that. The two of them have another fight where Elias kind of like disses, not disses, that's a weak word, but yells at her basically like, okay, he's done with this, he's done with her, like whatever, they don't have to be friends anymore. They have another confrontation after that where they actually physically fight, like they're sparring, they're fighting. That's again where Elias has this other, like, he's thinks about her like, oh well, do I love her? Could I love her? If I loved her, would that make my inevitable departure that much harder? Literally right before they kiss, because Elias is like, okay, you know what, I'm just gonna kiss her. So that they're fighting. He gets her. Does he get her pinned or she gets him pinned? One of the two. I think he gets her pinned. And he's like, okay, I'm just gonna kiss her. Literally right before they kiss, they're so mad that they didn't kiss. Because I was a Elias and Helene shipper. I was not an Elias and Laia shipper. I did change later on, but in the beginning I was very, very much wanting Helene and Elias to get together. But right before they kiss, they hear a scream. They both run and they find Laia, who is like lying, bleeding on the ground. Marcus beat her up very, very severely and was attempting to grape her. Laius and Helene are able to intercept that. They get Marcus away from her, but Laia has been so badly beaten that it's internal. She's bleeding internally. She's not going to survive. Elias asks Helene, please heal her. I know you can. Please do it. Helene is kind of hesitant, like, I don't know if I can. I only did it the one time. It did something strange to me. Like, now she's connected to Elias because she healed him in this very strange way. She's just kind of like, I don't really want to do it again. Elias once again gets mad at her, yells at her. The two of them go their separate ways. The POV switches back to Laia. In kind of her dying haze, she's aware of Helene coming into her room and singing. And Laia thinks that she's singing her to like a sweet death, that she's going to like ease the pain, stuff like that. And then Laia realizes, oh no, she's singing back to life. So Laia heals Helene tries to make amends with Elias, but he's very like brushing her off. No, he doesn't want anything to do with her. Helene snaps back that she healed Laia. It drained her. It felt like Helene's life was being sucked out of her, but she healed Laia. So the two of them kind of reconcile. The third trial takes place and ends. Elias is the winner. His prize is Laia, and he doesn't touch her, but the two of them are locked in his room for like 12 hours or something like that. He doesn't touch her. The two of them kind of talk very, very lightly, very surface. Then the fourth trial is the most intense trial, and it is they're battling against their greatest foes or whatever. So Elias enters the battlefield. He's like got all his men with him. He's allowed to bring his platoon of soldiers. They come face to face with the enemy, and the enemy they're fighting is Helene and her soldiers. And the rules are you have to fight until the leader of the opposite side is dead or the majority of their soldiers are dead. So Elias is like, what the heck? I'm not going to kill my best friend. So he kind of tries to like play offensive. Like he's letting Helene attack him. Helene is attacking him and his team kind of with an odd vigor. Like she's not really holding back. She seemed kind of surprised at first, kind of torn, but she's going at it. So Elias then at some point has to go at it too. There's this fight. They lose so many friends. Because they're all very close. Because Elias and Helene and their soldiers, they're all friends. They're close. They grew up together. A lot of them die, including Tristis, who was engaged, including Leander, who's had a crush on Helene his whole life. Elias tries to kill Helene. Like, he raises his knife and is about to kill her. She was gifted in one of the other trials that she won. She was gifted this, like, shirt that's, like, impenetrable metal, but it's super lightweight. So he tries to kill her, but fails because she's wearing this shirt. So that was the end of the fourth trial. Elias wins the fourth trial. So Elias has won 1. Marcus has won 1. Helene has won 1. But all 4 trials are done. We find out later that during Marcus and Zach's trial, they were fighting each other, and Marcus actually killed his brother. Marcus is left very, like, angry and bitter and just messed up mentally because of that. And I mean, in his defense, who wouldn't be? So the Aguars come up with a 5th trial to determine, like, okay, we've got 3 people still alive. Only 2 were supposed to be alive. So the trial is that the commandant found Laia guilty of treason, and she orders Marcus, Elias, and Helene to race to kill her. And the first person who kills her wins. And Elias is like, wait, but she hasn't done anything. Like, what has she done? She hasn't done anything. And the Aguar says, it doesn't matter what she's done. You're given an order. You need to obey it. So there's kind of this like, hesitation, like, oh, like, what the heck do I do? So when the gong or whatever sounds go, Elias runs forward, kind of throws himself in front of Laia to protect her. Helene takes out Marcus. She, like, knocks him unconscious and is like, okay, Elias, one of us has to kill her. We cannot let Marcus become emperor. I will kill her if you can't, and I'll make it painless. Elias is like, no, this is not a line I'm going to cross. You will have to kill me to get to her. The 2 of them are going at it. Marcus wakes up and very quickly kills Laia. Or, you know, we think she doesn't actually die, but he makes sure that he kills Laia. So Elias is now arrested. Elias is then arrested. So Elias is then arrested for treason because he refused an order. Marcus is announced the winner. He's the new emperor, and Helene is made Bloodstrike, which she seems very upset about, but she swears her loyalty to Marcus despite Elias, like, pleading with her as he's being dragged away. Don't do it, Helene, don't do it. She does it anyway. Elias is... Oh, why do I keep saying Elias? It's because I want Elias and Helene together. Elias is arrested and then sentenced to execution the next day, and he is sentenced to beheading, and Helene is the one who's ordered to, like, swing the axe, because they don't have, like, a guillotine. She has to actually, like, chop his head off. So... he's sitting up on the dais, and at this point in the story is where I started to not like Helene. I was like, okay, girlie, you're going too far, like, back off a little. Because she's standing there, she's got this massive axe, she raises it, she swings it down, Elias feels the blade into his neck, and then a split second before it would have actually gone too far and killed him, he hears this massive explosion. Part of Blackcliff is exploded, it's the resistance. There's chaos. Elias is able to escape. He finds out that Laia was not dead. It was just a trick. So the 2 of them plan on running, on escaping. Helene intercepts them and is like, yo, I have to explain what's been going on. The Aguars had visited her at the beginning of the trials and said, Elias will die unless you make a deal and do this, 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 and this. So Helene says, yes, she will do anything. She's in love with Elias. He's her best friend. She says she'll do anything to keep him alive. So the Aguars tell her, you have to follow through with the trials. You have to do exactly what is expected of you. You have to swear your loyalty to whomever is made emperor and do whatever they say, no matter what, and Elias will survive. So that's kind of why Helene back was, like, trying to push Elias to be emperor, because she's like, yeah, I'll swear my loyalty to you, no problem. You're not going to make me do anything crazy. So that's why she was so, like, okay, like, in the 4th trial, when she was face to face needing to kill Elias, she was like, okay, well, the Aguars told me if I do what I'm supposed to do, he won't die. So, okay, I'm just going to do what I'm supposed to do, and he won't die. When she was told to behead Elias, okay, this doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense, but yeah, I'm told to kill him, so I'm going to kill him and trust that he won't die. So that, like, clears up a lot of stuff for Elias, and for me as the reader. I was very relieved when that was explained, because, like I said, when she was on the dais, ready to chop his head off, I was kind of like, okay, I'm not really liking her so much anymore. She's evil. She's a bad character. I mean, a bad guy. Good character, bad guy. And then this was explained, and it was like, oh, okay, so she was honestly trying to save him. She was just trying to do what she was told to do. So the second book, or the first book, ends with Elias and Laia running away. Elias asks Helene to come with him, which I thought was so sweet, and I wish so badly that Helene had gone with him. But she says no, she can't, because she's still bound by her vow, and if she goes with him, then the Aguars stop protecting Elias, and he could then die. Which again, just like, I just love that so much about her, because she was like willing to stay enslaved in a whole different way than Laia was enslaved, but so that her best friend would live. I don't know. So that's how the first book ends. Like I said, I did very much enjoy the second book. There was a lot of character story. Kind of toward the halfway point, 3/4 of the way point, there started to be more fantasy story incorporated, and then the third book and the fourth book was mostly fantasy story, which is nothing wrong with. If that's your genre, that's your vibe, go for it. It was very hard for me to follow along. I kept getting bored. I also really did not like how the series ended. I'm all for killing characters, even if you're just killing them for attention, but when authors repeatedly do that, it gets very frustrating. And in my opinion, it goes beyond, oh, building tension, to it's just lazy. Like, okay, do it once or twice and then come up with other ways to build tension or to add heartbreak or whatever. So at the end of the second book, the second book is all about Helene trying to hunt down Elias. That's her order from Marcus. She has to hunt him down and kill him. She kind of finds a way around it, but her whole family, save for her younger sister, is murdered in front of her. So my heart broke for her for that. In the third book, what happens in the third book? In the third book, she kind of becomes very stone-faced, very stoic. She refers to herself as the Blood Shrek. She stops thinking about herself as Helene. In the fourth book, her younger sister is murdered in front of her. She finally gives in to a new character we meet in book 2, Avitas Harper, who becomes Helene's love interest. She gives into her feelings for him. The two of them, start something, and then he's brutally killed in front of her at the end. It was just kind of like, I really did like Helene as a character, but it just felt like she was the character who the author designated as, she's the emotional heartstrings character. She's the one that we're going to use to keep readers sad or miserable or add tension or whatever. And I didn't like that, because she was such a well-developed character. She was such a good character. Helene's character arc was so incredible, how she went. And it wasn't even like she was drastically different from book 1 and 4. I mean, she was, because of just all the pain and death that she's been through. But it just, I honestly cannot remember the last time I cried. I legit cried when I finished a book series. I cried when Avitas died in book 4, because it was sad, for one thing. My heart broke for Helene. I know she's fictional. None of these people even actually exist. But just the way that it was done, it just left me feeling very hopeless, which is not good when you read a book. And like I said, I'm not against killing characters, even if your sole purpose for killing them is to add emotional suspense or to launch another character into something. Like, that's great, use it, but use it, don't abuse it. And I'm so sorry, because I really did enjoy this series, but I just felt like the author it just felt like she got lazy, like she was running out of ideas as to how to keep the suspense building, so she just kept killing characters off, and she kept focusing on Helene and killing characters related to her, instead of killing characters related to Laia, or Elias, or the Soul Catcher, or whomever. So it just, I finished the series, and I had no desire to read it again, because it honestly ruined the end. And I know that's probably another, like, opinion thing that some people might see. It was like, oh no, that means that it was good if you were that emotionally invested, which I would agree with in a way, but there's a way you can do that to make me want to read the story again. I did not want to read the story again, because it just ended very poorly, in my opinion. And it had such amazing potential. The way that they set it up, with the Empire being restructured, Helene becoming the Empress, Elias and Laia resolving them becoming a thing. It would have been so good if the author just had given us as the readers something to hold on to. Especially because Helene was made a main character. If she was a side character and it was all this stuff was happening, okay, fine, maybe we wouldn't be emotionally attached to her. But when you've got a main character who you just keep hitting and hitting and hitting and hitting, I just don't like it. And it just felt very lazy to me. And that's a bummer, because like I said, it had such amazing potential. I was so looking forward to the end to see how everything resolved. And then as soon as Venus died and Helene has this moment where she's like, yeah, I, you know, kind of don't really have anything for me now. I just didn't like it. So that's, yeah. So I kind of talked about the rest of the series in very fast few minutes, but I'm so sorry for the length of this episode. I was not anticipating this taking this long, but there's a lot that happened in the first book. And like I said, I did enjoy the second book. I honestly would say the second book is probably more my favorite. I don't know. I like Helene, and I like that we get a POV for her in book 2, but I feel like I like Helene better in book 1, if that makes sense. So, if you made it to the end, you are a trooper. Thank you so much. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you never miss an episode.